Hi everyone, I'm Angie Spong and I'm putting together a series of projects for machine embroidery. To purchase the project, please go to my website at www.angies.co.nz, and you can also follow me on Facebook at Angie's Machine Embroidery. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. After checking my position on this machine, I needed to go back to the very first stitch before my basting function would operate for me. Now I've basted around the design here, and you can just check to see that everything's lining up on either side and that the basting on the top here is just slightly above where those marker stitches were. So now I can actually take those marker stitches out because it's all perfectly aligned and start sewing my first colour. Let's finish the back design the same as we did the front. Now to take that out of the hoop, and we'll turn it around 90 degrees and do the sides next. So we've now finished the embroidery for the top, the front and the back. We need to do the two sides now. So just turn your fabric around 90 degrees. And the first two stitches of the side pattern that I've brought up here need to align with the corner of the front and the back designs here. So I'll just get that sorted first, put the needle down into that corner, and I'll just pop a couple of pins in here. Then I'll go to the other side and we'll do the same thing. Right, so raise your needle and go on to the next stitch and align that with the corner of the design there. These alignment stitches that I put in at the beginning of these designs just make it so easy to get them positioned correctly. Right, now that I've got that aligned correctly, we'll raise the needle again and just go back to the beginning of the colour and select our basting function, and then I can baste the fabric down onto the wash away. That's my basting done. Now the first two stitches again of the first colour of the design are going to be going into the corner of the two designs here and here, so you can just check those. You don't actually need to sew them as such. Just forward the design on, check that that's in the right place there, and then go forward to the start of the design, which is in that corner. I've continued doing the embroidery, so all the colours are done there now. The border underlay has been stitched in the border colour, and I've just taken out the basting stitch along the front here and am just cutting away the fabric there. And if you just turn that back up like that and cut it with a sharp pair of scissors, you can cut nice and closely into the corners there and along the edge. So just snip that away and we're all ready now to stitch the border. That's my first side design completed. Now I'm going to unpick my basting, which is much easier to do from the underneath side so we don't get caught up in the stitching up here. Then I'll re-hoop with some more of the wash away, turn my work round to the other side and just repeat this side design. This is my second side design, and I'd basted it in position and then noticed when I got to the first stitch of the design that it wasn't placed accurately. Obviously the fabric had moved when the basting stitch had stitched up through here. So I've unpicked it a little bit, moved the fabric around and got it accurately positioned now. All my embroidery designs are finished now and they're looking lovely. On the other side here, I've unpicked all of the basting stitches and I've trimmed back any of the excess wash away. The other thing I need to do is to get a little pair of scissors and just trim any threads that are going to dangle down off from the edge, and also in the center here we don't want any threads showing in the opening, so just trim back all of those little threads off there. Then we're ready to wash our project and let it dry. My project has dried and I've given it a steam press so it's looking nice and neat. Now to pop the pattern over the top of the embroidery exactly there and mark where the cutting lines are. It's got a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance that we need to allow there. So once it's all marked, we can cut that out. This has all been trimmed back to size. Now what I'm going to do is to trim out as much of the batting as I can from the seam allowance. Pull the batting away from the back of the fabric there and get a little pair of scissors and trim this away. This just reduces the bulk from the seam allowance. Now all we need to do is to pin the seams together and sew them to complete our tissue box cover. We'll fold that side over the front and pin that seam close to the edge of the embroidery border stitching there. Just turn that over and make sure you've got that pinned in the right place at the back. Then we can fold this side over the front and pin that seam. And then we can do the same for the two back seams as well. The seams are all pinned together. Now I'm just going to take it to the machine and with a straight stitch sew as close to the embroidery design as possible. The 4 seams have now been stitched together. What I need to do with the seam allowance here now is to trim that back at an angle there, and I will just make that a little bit narrower on the seam allowance. Then at the machine you can either zigzag neaten that edge, or if you've got a faff machine, I've got a nice little overlock stitch on my website that works perfectly on this situation. All 4 seams have now been neatened off, and as you can see that little overlock stitch does a lovely job. Turn your work through and pop it onto your tissue box there and we're all done. Wow, that looks so lovely. I enjoy making tissue box covers and using the threads to complement the decor of the room that your tissue box will be in. Enjoy making yours.